November rain stitched the cemetery into gray cloth. The air smelled of wet leaves and cold stone. The light had that pewter quality that makes even skin seem undecided. Janelle Ward lifted Tyler from the back seat and pressed his hood up with her knuckles. The boy's fingers were warm through worn knit gloves. The gate's iron hinge gave a tired groan as she pushed it, one long syllable that sounded like a warning that arrived late. "Hold my hand," she said. "I am," he said, solemn. And he was. They walked the narrow lane between headstones, slick as seals. A bouquet of grocery store lilies rode in the crook of her arm, their white already bruising at the edges. Water gathered along the marble lip of a name. Janelle had learned to say the way you say a prayer you don't believe in, but can't stop repeating. Adrian Blackwell. The dates were clean. The silence around them wasn't. "Do I count?" Taylor asked, peering at the rain beating on letters. "You can," she said, "but we listen first." He nodded, like that made sense. It did. In their house, listening came before the number 8, before grapes in pears, before practicing a long, even bow on the violin without letting the note wobble at the end. Janelle set the flowers down and brushed water off the stone with the side of her palm. The chill bit bone. She breathed the way Helena taught her, 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold, and felt her chest widen just enough to let the day in without drowning. The locket lay cool beneath her sweater, a circle against a softer curve. She did not touch it yet. Footsteps on wet gravel, practiced and unhurried. A perfume that belonged to rooms with better carpet than this ground. Janelle didn't turn. She saw the reflection before the person, a pale oval wavering in the marble, as if the stone itself were remembering a face. "Excuse me," a woman's voice said, precise as cut glass. "This is a private moment." Janelle lifted her chin. "It is," she said. The woman stepped into view in a coat, the color of smoke. 50, maybe, with money that had ironed the years smooth. Her umbrella trembled once under a gust, then found its spine again. She looked from Janelle to the boy and back, a calculation flicking under the eyes the way fish turn just beneath the surface. "You're in the wrong place," she said. Tyler pressed closer, small sneaker toe on Janelle's boot. Rain ran off the boy's hood and darkened her sleeve. Janelle met the woman's gaze and felt the bruise of recognition. It wasn't the cheekbones or the set of the mouth. It was the way the eyes refused to ask permission for what they wanted to see. "What is your name?" the woman asked. "Janelle Ward." She let the syllables land without apology. "This is my son." The woman's glance skimmed the headstone and came back swift as a blade. "Why are you crying at my son's grave?" Janelle saw it then, the thing she had both hoped for and dreaded. The boy's eyes reflected in the marble, the exact green she'd learned to trust and to fear. Not an argument, not proof, just a color that made the past line up with the present for one unprotected second. "Because it's his father's," Janelle said, and the rain hit harder for a breath. As if the sky had flinched, the woman's gloved hands tightened on the bouquet she carried. White lilies. Expensive. So clean, they looked like the idea of flowers rather than any grown thing. A petal broke under her grip and slid down the stem like a surrender she hadn't intended to make. "My name is Veronica Blackwell," she said, and she said it the way you say a password to a door that has always opened when you arrived. "I don't know you." "You don't need to," Janelle said, "but you should know him." She crouched to Tyler's level, thumb smudging a raindrop off his cheek. "Say hello, baby." "Hello," he said, voice small and brave. Veronica's eyes tracked the boy's mouth, the shape of vowels, the way a lip lifts when a child is trying to be polite without being told how. She didn't look away. Not yet. This is obscene, she said finally, but the word sounded borrowed. You have no. She stopped. The word, right, tried to push through and hit something that wouldn't let it pass. Janelle stood. We come on the first Tuesday, she said. It's Keter. As if there were a schedule to grief, Veronica said. The sentence had teeth. There is, Janelle said. It's called Waking Up. A long beat, filled by rain on stone and a crow making a sound that wasn't music. Veronica's umbrella wobbled again. She didn't notice. She was looking at the boy the way you look at a map you didn't draw, and don't trust but need anyway. Who told you? She asked, and there it was, the habit of control. Reaching for a thread, she could follow back to a throat. Nobody had to, Janelle said, and allowed herself one small cruelty. Sometimes a face tells you, even if a bank account won't. Veronica's laugh was a single exhale with edges. If this is a pitch for money, you've chosen the ugliest possible stage. It isn't a pitch, Janelle said. It's a promise. To whom? Veronica demanded, and now anger steadied her, gave her back the posture you probably get measured for, along with platinum cards and security details. Janelle touched the locket through fabric, then let her hand fall. To the woman you never asked about, she said. To myself. To him, she tilted her head toward the stone. Veronica stared as if the letters might rearrange into mercy. They didn't. Water gathered in the Oa, Blackwell, and spilled over like an eye that had decided to stop pretending. What do you want? Veronica said. Lo, nothing from you? Janelle said. Not today. A car door thudded somewhere beyond the hedge. A black sedan idled near the gate. Engine a muted purr. Janelle clocked it without moving dark windows. Patient exhaustion. The way men in suits practice not being seen. Tyler tugged her sleeve. Mom, he whispered, is that bus big enough for everybody? Not a bus, she said, and smiled with half her mouth. And not for us. Veronica registered the sedan too. Nothing on her face changed, but her chin angled a degree toward control. She set her bouquet down and adjusted it, so the blooms opened toward the carved name, an instinct for presentation that didn't care whether the audience was living. You can't just appear like this, she said, soft now and more dangerous for it. It's cruel. Cruel is a door that only opens from one side, Janelle said. We're just standing at it. Tyler, bored of talking, counted raindrops on the edge of the stone under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. He paused. Can I do 8? You can, Janelle said. He started over, serious about it. The rhythm settled the space in a way no prayer had managed to. Veronica looked at the boy and then at the woman, and then at the name cut into rock, as if the order could rescue her from what she was seeing. It didn't. She bit her lower lip once, so fast a camera would have missed it. When it was over, her mouth was composed again. You will leave now, she said, and you will never. No, Janelle said, and it was astonishing how much relief the word carried, as if she had been holding it between her molars since the day a heart monitor went flat. We won't. The sedan by the gate adjusted its idle. A tiny change Janelle felt in her knees more than in her ears. She turned her head enough to see the driver's side mirror catch a thread of light. Someone was watching the scene as if it were television, and they had paid for the channel. You brought company, she said. I am company, Veronica said, anger returning like circulation to a limb. And I am done with this. You've made your little point. Now go. Janelle did not move. The cold had found her wrists, crept up bone, lodged where pulse kept thinking it was in charge. She breathed again, 4 in, hold, 4 out, hold, and felt the panic flatten under the weight of her own lungs working. I didn't come to make a point, she said. I came to keep one. What does that even mean? Veronica snapped. It means I promised a person I loved that I would stand where she couldn't, and I am. The rain eased, as if the day had misjudged how much it had left to give. On the far path, an old man in a cap walked a small dog that didn't want to be here. The dog sneezed, offended by wet. The man tipped his head to nobody in particular and kept moving. The world continued to do its work, indifferent and thorough. Tyler finished his count and tugged at Janelle again. 8, he whispered. He gets 8. He does, she said, and 1 for luck. Luck isn't a standard, Veronica said, and then blinked at herself, surprised to have said something that true. She glanced at the sedan. Whatever she saw there steadied her further. You'll hear from me, she said. I already did. Janelle said, I'm here. Veronica's umbrella twitched, a small tremor the rain didn't cause. She stepped back, heels slipping a hair on moss she hadn't seen. Janelle moved without thinking, a hand out, not touching, a hinge set to catch if gravity demanded. Veronica righted herself alone and drew up straight. The space between them cooled. This is obscene, she said again, but now it sounded like she was trying to convince the stone. We'll go, Janelle said, because Tyler's hood had soaked through, and his eyelashes were black with water. But we'll be back. She took the boy's hand and turned. The lilies Veronica had brought faced the name like witnesses sworn too late. The lilies Janelle had brought leaned against the base, imperfect and honest, she thought, stupidly, about the price difference, and then hated herself for ranking grief. At the gate, the hinge groaned a goodbye. The sedan's windows stayed up. As she passed, Janelle saw herself reflected in the black glass. A woman with rain in her hair, and a child at her side, and a spine that ached from being used. She did not look away. The locket warmed under her sweater like a coin that had remembered its job. Mom, Tyler said, as they reached the car, if the bus door only opens one way, how do people get off? They ask, she said, buckling him in, or they wait for someone decent to open it. Are we decent? He asked. We're trying, she said. She slid behind the wheel and let her head drop to the steering wheel for one breath. The wiper blades squeaked across glass, a sound like a racing chalk you can still see. When she lifted her face, the rearview mirror held her eyes steady. She started the engine. A bus hissed on the street beyond the cemetery wall, air brakes releasing, door opening with that tired, faithful click. The driver waited half a beat longer than the schedule demanded for a woman who ran with her coat unbuttoned and her bag thumping her hip. Janelle watched the hinge do what hinges are for. Then she pulled into traffic, the rain slackening, the day deciding nothing and moving anyway. The elevator in Blackwell Tower moved like a decision already made. Soft lighting, mirrored walls, the faint cologne of a man who left before dawn. Veronica stepped out on 42 with her umbrella still damp and handed it to an assistant who materialized without sound. The carpet gave under her heels the way power does when it recognizes one of its own. Ms. Blackwell, Raymond said from the doorway. Tea straight, voice softer than the glass. We have the room. They did. Walnut table. City spread beneath the windows. A tray of lilies that hadn't yet learned how to die. A private investigator set down a stack of manila folders bound with red string like gifts from a mean Santa. A compliance director with careful hair plugged in a laptop and waited to be told who he was today. Veronica didn't sit. Parameters, she said. Identity, history, vulnerabilities. The investigator said. Employment, housing, social services, touch points. We'll pull hospital indexes, vital records, anything that points to a birth certificate or the lack of one. Careful, Raymond added. No bruised fruit. We don't buy a scandal we didn't order. Veronica's gaze found the city, and held it as if the skyline were too slow. "You'll get me clarity," she said. "Not noise." The investigator nodded, grateful for a word that looked like a boundary. "Will be discreet," he said. "Define discreet," she said, not smiling. He didn't try. He closed his folder with a soft click that sounded like a promise he was underpaid to keep. By afternoon, the first report arrived in her inbox, like a bird that had learned to use a door. Subject line: Ward, Janelle, open source plus preliminary record pull. The executive summary was neat, spare, and shaped like a cage. 2 jobs. No degree beyond high school. 1 bedroom with a radiator that complains, rent late twice in 12 months. Child enrolled in public elementary. No custody order on file. No hospital birth record located. Veronica scrolled without touching the scroll wheel. It was a trick she'd taught herself when her son was little. How to get through something awful without appearing to move. She forwarded the email to comms. Draft holding lines. Emphasize respect for process. We will always put the child first. She deleted our before child and let the deletion live. A second window chimed. Procurement wanted signatures. A donor wanted a brunch table. A board member wanted to know if this would affect optics. Everything was optics until it became a warrant. She knew the difference and had arranged her days so it never surprised her. She opened a new message and typed 3 words to a fixer who owed her. "Take care of." She stopped. She breathed. She deleted the dash and the verb and closed the window without saving. The lilies watched her do it, or she imagined they did. The diner's back room smelled like lemon cleaner and old coffee. Janelle stood by the schedule board with a towel in her hand, and the calendar's red X's marching across a month that wasn't done yet. The manager came in, eyes on a phone, voice trying to be neutral. "You see this?" he asked, holding up a screen that carried a headline like a bruise. "Waitress claims heir." The photo wasn't hers, but the apron was, and the font was the kind that swings first. "I see it," she said. He shifted his weight. "Owners concerned. Customers might." He shaped the air. The word he didn't say was choose. "You want my apron," she said, tired and easy, "or just my shift?" 2 weeks off the books. He said quickly, "It'll blow over. Come back. No hard feelings." "Hard feelings are free," she said. She took the towel to the sink and wrung it out until water ran clean. She hung it neatly. She unpinned her name tag and set it on the counter like a tooth she wasn't going to keep. On the way out, the bell over the door miscounted her steps. The landlord texted while she waited for the bus. "Inspection tomorrow, 8 a.m. Heat, access required." No greeting, no apology, just authority that didn't need punctuation. She replied, 2 p.m. As per lease, I will be present. She added a line from the tenant statute Helena had taught her to copy the way other people copy recipes. She pressed send and watched the dots consider arguing, then go silent. The bus hissed to its knee and opened. She climbed with a hand on Tyler's seat from memory, a ghost routine that kept balance even when there was nothing to steady. At home, she cleared the table and laid out what she had built in the hours. People say don't count. Emails printed and placed in sleeves. A note in Adrian's hand with a coffee ring staining the date. Pediatric appointment cards. A folded photo with 2 girls on a curb eating lemon ice. Both squinting, both pretending not to smile. She set a composition notebook next to the stack and wrote, "Chain," on the cover with a marker that stank of school supply aisles. She opened to the first page. She put the date. She drew a line. "Milk," Tyler asked from the doorway, sock feet whispering on the floor. "2 hands," she said. He carried the glass like a mission and didn't spill. He set it down and peered at the sleeves. "Are those for the judge?" he asked. "They're for us," she said, "so we don't forget." "Why would we forget?" he asked, puzzled by the prospect. "Because people make rooms noisy," she said. "Paper makes them quiet again." He nodded as if she'd said something about buses instead of birth records. He went to the window to check on the world and left his breath on the glass like a signature. Janelle pulled on a pair of nitrile gloves that smelled faintly like a dentist's office and slipped the coffee ring note into a sleeve. She smoothed the edge with the back of a knuckle, then logged the time, received, Shuwu, Sushirar. Source, personal effects. Condition, intact. Stained, it felt ridiculous and holy at once. She let it. The power flickered at 6. A stutter of old wiring and municipal fatigue. The radiator knocked as if asking to be let out. Janelle lit 2 candles and turned off the kitchen light to give the room a rule. The quiet reached the bones. It had a temperature. Footsteps outside the door. A knock without rhythm. She wiped her hand, breathed, and opened. A woman stood in the hall with a clipboard and a badge that said Child Welfare Services in a font that took itself seriously. She wore flats that meant business and a coat that had seen better cubicles. Behind her, a man pretended to be uninterested in a thermostat. "Unannounced home visit," the woman said, "already writing." "We had a call." "From who?" Janelle asked. She didn't expect an answer. She wasn't disappointed. "May we come in?" the woman said. "You may stand in the doorway," Janelle said, and was surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Per the handbook, the woman's pen paused. Her eyes flicked to the clipboard, to Janelle, to the boy in the next room making a bus out of 3 shoeboxes and a roll of tape. "We got a report of unsafe conditions," the woman said. "The condition is poverty," Janelle said, "and a landlord who reads tabloids." "We don't read tabloids," the woman said. "We read checkboxes." It wasn't unkind. It was honest. They did the dance. Smoke detectors, medications up high, food in the fridge, bedtime, grapes in pairs. The woman wrote like a person who knows she will be asked to justify each pen stroke to someone who wasn't there. The man checked the radiator with the sort of interest that should have paid rent. He found nothing worth noting, and wrote anyway. At the end, the woman closed her folder with a tired accuracy and handed over a card. "We'll schedule a follow-up," she said. "With notice." "Thank you," Janelle said. She meant it. Courtesy is a kind of armor. If you wear it long enough. When the door closed, she stood with her hand on the knob for a count of 8 and felt the metal cool under her palm. Tyler slid the shoebox bus across the floor and stopped it at her foot. "You have to say, 'Next stop,'" he instructed. "Next stop," she said. Her voice didn't break. It just changed shape. Elsewhere, a newsroom debated a headline without adjectives. A junior copy editor said "alleged" 3 times and earned a nod. Someone suggested raid. Standard suggested search under warrant. Instead, professionalism is sometimes a kind of rebellion. Elsewhere, a compliance dashboard breathed. An admin console wrote the time in a log nobody reads until they have to. The diary was quiet, which is not the same thing as empty. Night pulled its weight. Janelle stacked the sleeves, slid the notebook between 2 manila folders, and rubber-banded the lot with a wrap that bit her thumb and reminded her she was meat and not an idea. She set the packet in the oven because it was fireproof and because she was her mother's daughter. She wrote "oven" in the notebook because memory is not a system. She washed her hands and watched the suds gather at the drain like small, driven clouds. The locket tapped her sternum, a soft metronome. She looked at the clock. She did not call anyone. She didn't yet know who to trust with a voice. In a room full of air that didn't remember anything, Veronica stood at her desk with a phone in her hand and a sentence on her tongue. "Take care of her quietly," she said, and the room did not echo. She listened to the line breathe and then end. She opened her email. She pulled up the note to herself she had closed on impulse and typed it again without trying to be coy. "Take care of her quietly." She hovered over. Send. Then she dragged the message to the trash and pressed delete. A dialog box asked if she was sure. She clicked yes, harder than necessary, and felt nothing change. Somewhere in the stack, a system logged the action with the precision of a clock that doesn't forgive. Back in the apartment, the radiator exhaled warmth like a tired animal. Tyler slept with one hand draped over the side of the bed, palm open to whatever the night brought. Janelle turned off the lamp and left the coin of hallway light. The bus in her son's dream pulled to a stop and opened its door with that small, faithful click. She stood at the window and put her palm to the glass and felt the city answer, cool and patient, as if it had time to wait for her to choose the next thing. Blackwell Tower had a lobby like a thawed glacier, clear, cold, and full of expensive stillness. Security scanned Janelle's ID with the politeness of people who look at faces for a living and don't find surprises comforting. The elevator climbed without a shudder. Her reflection rose with her, then flattened into glass. She pressed her fingertips to the seam where two panels met and felt the metal's faint vibration like a pulse that belonged to someone else. 42 opened on carpet that gave and walls that didn't. An assistant led her down a corridor where doors had no name, only numbers that implied you'd been told enough. The conference room waited with the city performing outside the glass. A bowl of white lilies kept the table from looking like an altar only to money. Veronica stood already in place, as if she had never been anywhere else. Raymond occupied a corner with the stillness of a man who owned his oxygen. A second chair sat lower than the one at the head, a joke played too often to be funny. "Ms. Ward," Veronica said. Her voice could have filed emotion on its own. "Thank you for coming." Janelle set her bag down and didn't sit. The low chair waited and continued to be low. She let it. Tyler had been dropped at Helena's with grapes in eights and instructions to practice one long note without breaking. Janelle's chest did the same, only silent. "I prefer to stand," she said. "As you wish." Veronica gestured to the city as if she, too, preferred to stand above. "I imagine you know why we're here." "You invited me," Janelle said. "I assumed you had a reason." Veronica smiled in a way that added nothing to the room. She reached into a folder and produced a check, the color of koi. She slid it across the table. The paper made a soft, expensive whisper that sounded like good manners. "Failing 200,000, Veronica said. "Now, further support to be discussed. In exchange, you will transfer guardianship. Tyler will have everything he deserves. Education, stability. You will have visitation as appropriate." "As appropriate to whom?" Janelle asked. "To the child's best interests," Raymond said smoothly. "As determined by people in chairs taller than this one," Janelle said. The check sat in the space between them like a dare. She picked it up. The paper was thicker than the paper she knew. It didn't bend easily. She didn't either. She tore it once, then again. The halves fell apart like a decision that had been waiting for the right hands. Veronica blinked. Just once. That was unwise. "Unwise is a red light you call negotiable," Janelle said. Raymond leaned forward, elbows respectful of the table's finish. "Ms. Ward, we appreciate your conviction, but feelings do not win custody. Paper does." "Good," Janelle said. I brought mine. She slid a manila folder across in return. Inside, the coffee ring note from Adrian, the pediatric appointment cards, a printout of the unannounced visit, logged with time and badge number. On top, a photo of a mailbox bank with 4 names, each an empty company with a lease bigger than most lives. Veronica did not reach for the folder. Where did you get this? From a street, Janelle said. They keep secrets in plain sight there. We will contest custody on the grounds of instability, Raymond said, gentle like a scalpel. 2 jobs, a 1-bedroom. Recent emploiement interruption. We will ask the court to appoint a guardian ad litem to assess. We will present a schedule that avoids disruption, and you will make a plan that looks like care and feels like theft, Janelle said. Words like that aren't helpful, Raymond said. They are to me, she said. Veronica's gaze slid to the window, found the river, then returned. Why didn't you come to me sooner? I did, Janelle said. You didn't hear it. Veronica's hand tightened on the back of the tall chair. The lilies breathed their faint, well-bred scent. Petal edges unblemished. You're angry, she said. I'm organized. Janelle said, Enga spills. I label. A beat. On the glass, a helicopter fussed with the skyline and then left it alone. Somewhere above them, ductwork hummed like a machine, remembering a song. Enough, Veronica said. We're done with theater. You will receive a petition by week's end. Do not mistake our patience for lack of capacity. Capacity is not character, Janelle said, and thought of Tyler's careful bow hand, the way he corrected his own wrist before the teacher could touch it. Raymond cleared his throat. We can also explore interim arrangements, tuition, for example, medical. We are not monsters. Monsters rarely think they are, Janelle said, and then, because she had promised herself 1 moment of mercy per room, added, I will accept tuition. In writing, in Tyler's name, no strings, no PR. Veronica looked as if someone had asked her to lift a weight she didn't train for. Done, she said. Send routing details to counsel. Janelle nodded. I'll have my lawyer do that. Your lawyer, Veronica repeated, tasting the words like citrus to see if they were sweet. And who is that? The one that answers. Janelle said. She took her bag. She didn't offer a hand. She left the lilies untouched. In the hallway, the air conditioning felt newly cruel. Her phone buzzed. A text from the number on the Child Welfare Services card. Follow-up moved up. Today, 5 p.m. No name. No, please. She stood very still and read it twice, as if meaning wanted a second chance to be anything else. She texted Helena. They're coming again. Early. Helena replied with a thumbs up, and then with, we label, we breathe. Grapes ready. Downstairs. The lobby music was a piano that had learned not to be sentimental. Janelle walked past a security guard who didn't meet her eyes. Outside, the wind came around the corner with city grit in it. She tasted it and decided to go home by bus. Even though the subway was faster, speed wasn't the point today. Witness was. The second home visit arrived with flats that had learned to look less official. A different woman this time. Same clipboard, same pen that moved like it wanted a promotion. The landlord hovered in the hall, pretending to check fire doors. The radiator clanged on cue. Tyler placed his shoebox bus exactly flush with the threshold and announced no exits on the left. Like a foreman. Ma'am, the new worker said, we received a supplemental report. From whom? Janelle said, and saved everyone time by adding, right. Checkboxes. We'll be brief, the woman said, as if speed were kindness. She went through the kitchen drawers with a careful finger, noted the locked cabinet with a precise nod, looked at the fruit bowl like it could lie. Do you have support? She asked at last, not looking up. I have a circle, Janelle said. Name tags optional. Family. the woman said, making the word sound like a test. Defined broadly, Janelle said she thought of Amaya, of Chen, of Dara, who talked in verbs, of Helena, who could stop a room with a spoon. The woman checked a box. The sound of the pen's tip scraping paper filled a small place in Janelle's head and wouldn't leave. When they were done, the worker handed over another card, nearly identical to the first, only the phone number different by a single digit. Follow up with notice, she said. We did this today. Janelle said, and we'll do it again. The woman said, neither threatening nor reassuring. That's the job. After the door closed, Janelle stood with her back to it and counted to 8. Tyler tugged her sleeve. They didn't like the bus, he said, offended on its behalf. They don't ride, she said. It passed for a joke, and he took it. She went to the table and wrote everything down in the notebook. Time, badge number, questions asked, what hand the woman wrote with, the way the landlord pretended to check something only he had installed. She logged. Second card, number off by 1, and underlined it twice. The room quieted in increments. The radiator found a rhythm. A neighbor's laugh broke against the stairwell and slid away. Janelle sat and pressed the locket flat under her palm. We are not a rumor, she said to the wood. The wood took it. It had taken worse. Evening put gold on the river and neon on the rest. In the tower, Veronica leaned on her desk and pretended her back didn't hurt. Raymond left, and the room got bigger by the amount of air he'd taken with him. She dialed compliance and spoke in a tone that would age well in a transcript. We will not be party to a smear, she said. Communications will use neutral language. Any engagement with social services will be documented and above board. If anyone suggests shortcuts, they can practice them somewhere I don't have to live. She hung up, surprised at herself, and therefore annoyed. She looked at the lilies. A petal had browned where her fingers had pressed too hard earlier. She broke it off, with the delicacy of someone who had once learned needlepoint and hated being good at it. She placed the dead piece in the trash and stared until it became just trash. Her phone buzzed. A board member. We stand with you. Another. This will pass. Another. This affects optics. She typed, we respect the process, and sent it to all 3. Then put the device face down. The glass showed her outline anyway. The office lights dimmed in their programmed way. She stayed in the half-light and listened to the building. Consider its lungs. Somewhere below, a security guard told a joke. Somewhere above, a printer threw a page and regretted it. She thought of the boy's green eyes, and the way the woman Janelle had not sat. She thought of Adrian at 8, at 12, at Aldain, saying, don't buy people. Mom, she thought of the check torn clean and felt, unexpectedly, something like relief at being refused. When she finally stood to leave, the chair at the head of the table creaked. The low chair did not. Both were empty. She turned off the lamp and let the city take over the job of lighting the room. It did, quickly and without drama. Power likes its routine. Night bus, homeward. Janelle sat where she could see the door hinge do its quiet, faithful work. A man in a paint-smeared hoodie dozed with his chin on his chest. A nurse scrolled through pictures of someone's baby. Her mouth softened at each one. The driver waited a beat for a woman limping to the curb and didn't check the clock first. At her stop, Janelle stepped down into puddled light. She listened for steps, for cars that idle too long, for the sound of someone breathing who isn't cold enough to shiver. She heard only a radio somewhere up the block and the quick, high laughter of teenagers on their way to be somewhere else. Inside, Helena had left a post-it on the table. Tuition line ready when you are. Verbs loaded. Next to it, a small pile of grapes counted out in 2s. Each pair tugged apart clean, Tyler slept with the violin case open at the foot of his bed, a small sin they'd forgive. Janelle washed her hands and let the water run past skin as if it could take any of this with it. It didn't. She dried her palms on a towel gone thin at the middle and set her notebook on the counter. She wrote one line. We stood. We didn't sell. She underlined it once. The window glass was cool. Her reflection met her halfway. She touched the pane. Outside. A late bus hissed and opened for a man who ran with his bag bouncing. The driver waited that extra half second that isn't in any manual. The door swung. The hinge held somewhere downtown. A woman with a lily petal on her thumb turned on a hallway light and walked into it, not ready and going anyway. The church basement was warmer than it looked. Metal chairs and linoleum that had learned to survive bake sales. A coffee urn older than anyone in the room. A fluorescent tube hummed overhead like a tired hive. Someone had taped a hand-lettered sign over the piano. No chopsticks, which felt like a rule for more than music. Amaya arrived first, shaking rain from her jacket onto a mat that had once said "Welcome" in a friendlier font. She set a messenger bag on the table and drew out a legal pad, a pen with 3 colors, and a cheap recorder. Because redundancy is a form of love. Dada came next, a slim binder already tabbed, hair pulled back to keep her sentences straight. Helena eased down the steps, carrying a plate of cornbread wrapped in a towel, the church lady disguise that had fooled no one since the Reagan era. Dr. Chen took the last stare like it might shift. Expression amused, eyes alert. Last, Daniel slipped in with his shoulders, learning to be smaller than they were built. Janelle closed the door behind him and set the bolt. Not because bolts stop systems, but because rituals anchor hands. The hinge squeaked and then decided to behave. "This is us," Helena said, laying the cornbread like an offering. "Don't name it anything you'd be embarrassed to say in a deposition." Amaya clicked the recorder on and set it where everyone could see the red dot winking. "Off the record," she said, "which means on my honor until I publish. And I won't publish this. I publish outcomes, not meetings." "Circle," Janelle said, and the word landed on the table without fuss. "Circle is fine." Dada agreed. "No Greek letters. No Latin either. The court likes verbs, not fraternities." Daniel kept his hands in his pockets and looked at the floor until his mouth found words. "The place I work has diaries," he said. "They write themselves. You can't turn them off. You can read around them, but they keeping writing the whole time you're pretending they don't exist." "Admin console logs," Chen said, pleased with the familiar shape. "Immutable, or as immutable as men get. As immutable as a machine can be when nobody's yelling at it." Daniel said, "Team stamps, user IDs, export marks. Every report has a birthmark in the footer. You can change the report. The birthmark stays." Dada unchapped a pen. "Blue today. Chain of custody. I can get copies without tripping alarms if I do it the slow, dumb way." Daniel said, "Printed to PDF on a machine that thinks it's lonely. I can save to a neutral drive. Hash it with SHA-256. Write the hash down in ink. Double bag the thumb drive in tamper-evident sleeves. You want me to bring 1 for you? One for the special master. So nobody has to trust me more than they want to." Amaya rested her chin on her hand. "You just proposed a romance," she said. Between paperwork and courage, Helena cut the cornbread and handed plates like communion. "We'll feed the body so the law can do its work," she said. "Speaking of law," Dara slid a document across to Janelle. "Emergency motion landed this morning," she said. "Petition for temporary custody evaluation advanced on an expedited concern basis. I'll respond by noon. They want you to panic." "Don't." "What's the verb?" Janelle asked. Oppose, Dada said. Narrow scope, bind them to their own adjectives. Ask for a guardian ad litem who knows children are not briefcases. Miriam Porter, Helena offered. I taught her when she was fresh, sharp without being cruel. She eats statutes for breakfast. Good, Dara said. I'll request. Amaya tapped her pad. Media says you're unstable, she said to Janelle. Quiet. I can push a counter-narrative without turning you into a saint. A piece on process. Calm. No adjectives. A photo of a mailbox bank with 4 shell names. The public can search without paying me. Nothing that touches sealed exhibits. No saints, Janelle said. They don't ride buses. Also, Chen added, the more we look like we enjoy drama, the more a judge will give us a timeout. We are boring in public. We save opera for the basement. Daniel smiled without showing teeth. I brought opera, he said, and set a plain envelope on the table. Not the whole thing. A prelude. Dara pulled on nitrile gloves from her bag, the blue kind, slightly too big. She nodded to Janelle, who did the same. Sleeves took. Amaya photographed the envelope's face with her phone. The image immediately, a ghost in the cloud. Chen pushed his glasses up his nose and set his watch to second hand. Because time matters once you say it does. Describe, Dada said. Envelope, Daniel answered. Manila, letter size, sealed with standard gummed flap. Initialed across the seal. Date and time noted along the edge. He tilted it so the handwriting sat in the light. By me. Contents. Administrativo. Excerpts. 3 pages. Printed to PDF. Exported yesterday at 19. Sushisan. Hash. Generated last night. Written here. He tapped the top right, where a precise block of numbers and letters settled like a small city. Received, Dada said, and read the time from Chen's watch. 18:49 hours. Janelle wrote it down in the notebook she'd labeled Chain. At her kitchen table. Her handwriting had steadied these past days. The act of making each letter legible felt like a bargain with a god who prefers evidence. Helena slid a plate of cornbread toward Daniel. Eat, she said. Courage burns calorie. They broke the seal together. Dara lifted the pages by the edges, as if paper could feel respect. The log lines were spare, monotonous, exact. User, Herrick. Action, reclassify. Object, expense consulting. Capital, expenditure. Timestamp, 2023. 06. 1, 2, T, 0, 9. Shirar, 45Z. Again. User, admin. Action, export. Report, bid sequence proc. Timestamp, 2023-06. 1, 2, T, 09. Shawu, 2Z. Footer, Jen, the 12th of June, 2023. Dara traced a margin with her pen. They'll argue routine, she said. We'll argue motive and sequence. Sequence always tells on liars, Chen said. He pointed at the footer. Birthmarks don't care about stage makeup. Amaya leaned back. The public doesn't need to see this yet, she said. But they can see the mailbox bank and the calendar entries. Let them be nosy on their own time. Good, Dada said. We don't feed the wolves when the judge is hungry. How bad is expedited? Janelle asked. Dada consider. Bad is when they move faster than you can breathe. We will make them breathe. Helena poured coffee, black enough to make promises. I spoke to a tenant union friend, she said. Your landlord will inspect out of schedule again because someone phoned him a rumor. I can stand there with you and a statute. I'm less charming than a rumor. Rumor doesn't know where we keep the lease. Janelle said. She rested her palm on the chain notebook and felt the weight of paper as an argument. Daniel wiped a crumb from his lip with the back of a hand that didn't feel like his. They're not gentle, he said, almost to himself. Who, darling? Helena asked. The people who think time is clay, he said. He looked up. They told me to. He stopped. The line broke like a string that couldn't hold a note. Never mind. Chen watched him with the patience of a man who's seen students freeze. You don't have to be brave all at once, he said. You can be boring and write for a while. Amaya flicked her pen to green. I'll put together a standards memo, she said. Words we won't use. Words we will. We never call a search. A Donai. Raid. We never say. Snatched. When the legal term is removed. We call people by names, not by incomes. Alleged goes where the sentence would otherwise fight you, Dara added. And if anyone asks you a question you don't want to answer, you say, I respect the process. And you walk. Helena pointed a fork. And you wear good shoes, she said. Courts have stairs. Laughter came without permission and left the room less brittle. The church building settled, a beam adjusting to November. Above them, a choir rehearsal practiced a hymn in a key that didn't love them back. The notes stumbled, then found each other like people in a dark theater, reaching for hands they meant to hold all along. Janelle stood and stretched her hands until the tendons in her wrists remembered their job. We have a circle, she said. We have verbs. We have birthmarks. We will not outshout money. We will outlast it. Speaking of money, Amaya said, and slid a small paper across Veronica's tuition offer. Typed, unsigned, waiting. You want this. I'll take tuition, Janelle said. No photo, no quote. Done. Dara said. We'll accept and tie it to their own ethics. The court likes children with vaccines and rent paid. Helena adjusted the towel over the cornbread. Then we proceed, she said. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Dark humor break. Amaya offered. If anyone asks why we're meeting in a church basement, tell them it's for the proximity to forgiveness. Forgiveness is on the second floor, Helena said. We're with the water heater and the truth. They packed up. Dara slid the log into a sleeve, labeled it with the time, and tucked it into a hard case that clicked like a lock. Finding itself, Daniel pocketed nothing and felt that as a victory, Chen wiped crumbs from the table with professional care. A clean surface is its own petition. Amaya clicked off the recorder and held up the device. Alive, she said. All of us. Up the steps. The door resisted, and then decided to be kind. The hinge took the weight, as hinges do, thankless and fundamental. Outside, the street offered wet breath, and the rattle of a bus a block away. Its door opened, stayed, closed. On the corner, a man with a clipboard asked passers-by if they had a minute for justice, and most said no, and kept walking in the rain. Janelle turned her face up and let the weather touch her. She didn't flinch. She thought of the word expedited, of how it sounds like mercy and feels like a shove. She thought of a boy at a small desk, counting grapes in twos, and a woman in a tower, plucking a brown petal with fingers that had never scrubbed a floor. She thought of a machine that writes diaries, and does not care if men keep secrets. What's next? Amaya asked, falling into step. Inspection at 2, Janelle said. Then we breathe. Then we file. Then we eat, Helena said. No one argues while hungry. Then we sleep. Chen attempted. Amaya snorted. Optimist. They reached the corner as the bus hissed to a stop. The driver met Janelle's eye through glass and lifted 2 fingers from the wheel. A salute to no one in particular and to everyone at once. She lifted her hand back, palm open, fingers steady. The door swung, the hinge held, and the city indifferent. Relentless made room for them in its moving parts. Family Court Part 12 smelled like old varnish and damp wool. The pew benches had a shine born of other people's impatience. A bailiff arranged water pitchers with the devotion of a florist. Janelle sat behind counsel table with her hands flat and her jaw unclenched, practicing the quiet trick that made space where there wasn't any. Dara stacked her binder. Tabs like orderly flags, blue for law, yellow for fact, red for traps. On the other side, Veronica arrived with a crescent of lawyers, 5 dark suits that moved as one body. Raymond took the center. He carried nothing, and somehow that read as everything. Veronica did not look toward the gallery, where cameras were forbidden but attention wasn't. "All rise," the clerk said, and the room obeyed. Judge Navarre took the bench with the careful economy of a man who disliked theater and knew he'd been seated in one. He clicked a pen once, looked over the calendar, and picked their case like a carpenter, choosing which board to plane first. On petitioner's motion to advance a temporary custody evaluation, he said, and respondent's opposition, appearances. Raymond stood. Raymond Cade for petitioner, Veronica Blackwell. With associates, Dara Lynn for respondent. Janelle Ward. Dara said, "My client is present." Navarre nodded as if that were a small mercy. "Proceed." Raymond rose without hurry. "Your Honor, we seek a focused, expedited evaluation limited to home stability and educational opportunity. The child is entitled to consistency and resources. Ms. Ward's recent employment interruption raised legitimate concern. We propose a guardian ad litem and interim placement with petitioner, while evaluation proceed with liberal visitation to respondent." Dara didn't let the words settle. "We oppose in substance and scope. There is no emergency basis. The proper standard is best interests, not best funded. Status quo has been safe. If the court appoints a guardian ad litem, respondent requests Miriam Porter, with whom this part is familiar. Interim relief should prohibit unilateral removal and require both parties to preserve records and refrain from extrajudicial statements likely to prejudice the process." Navarre looked at his watch as if it owed him money. "Evidence." Dara slid a slim folder forward. "Affirmation with exhibits, household photographs, pediatric appointment cards, teacher letter, child welfare notes from last week and yesterday, unannounced and supplemental visits, both cleared. Also, written offer from petitioner to fund tuition without conditions. Respondent accepts." Raymond smiled with 2 teeth. "Tuition is not an admission, Your Honor. It is responsibility." "Fine," Navarre said. "We like responsibility." Petitioner's exhibits. Raymond offered a packet the thickness of a magazine. Payroll records indicating interruption. Social media posts referencing financial stress. Landlord notice of inspection. Dara raised 2 fingers. "Objection to characterization. An inspection is not a deficiency, and curated social entries are not probative of parental fitness." "Relax." "Counsel," Navarre said, "curated is my word, not yours." He took both packets and scanned the first page of each, lips moving just enough to prove he was reading. He turned to the clerk. "Where are we on guardian ad litem assignments?" "Porter has capacity," the clerk said. "She's in the building." "Fetch her," Navarre said, and the clerk vanished like competent magic. The room expanded for a breath. Janelle found her own hands and loosened them. She felt the locket under the cotton of her blouse and did not reach for it. She kept her gaze on a nick in the table's edge and let it be a horizon she could trust. From the back, a reporter coughed into her sleeve on purpose. Amaya sat 3 rows deep, legal pad balanced on her knee. A line already written, "Judge declines theater. Asks for verbs." She didn't plan to print that. It was for her. The door opened. Miriam Porter came in like a breeze that had learned etiquette early 50s. Flat shoes, hair that said she had better uses for time. She nodded to both tables and to the bench without bowing to any. "Ms. Porter," Navarre said, "if appointed, can you accept promptly and report in 2 weeks on home environment, schooling, and parent-child interaction? Limited scope." "I can," Miriam said, "and I will not accept surprises as data." "Good," Navarre answered. "You're appointed. Council will cooperate." Now, about interim relief. Raymond stepped back into the river. "We still seek temporary placement pending evaluation. Ms. Ward's setting is constrained." Dara kept her voice level. "Status quo preserves stability. A sudden change would be the harm. If the court wants teeth, order both parties to maintain the child's current routines and exchange information daily." "Teeth we have," Navarre said. He uncapped his pen like a gavel. "Interim order. No changes to custody or residence pending GAL report. Daily exchange of school and medical information. Petitioner's tuition offer is accepted and to be executed within 3 business days. Payment to the institution directly. Parties will not disparage each other or discuss litigation with the child. Further, each party will preserve records digital, paper, call logs. If anyone destroys anything, I will have opinions." He looked at both tables in turn. "Questions?" Raymond measured the air. "We'd request a narrow restraint on public comment, Your Honor. Given the media interest, summaries of filings are fair game." Navarre said, "Leaking sealed material is not. Use your judgment, or borrow mine." The corner of his mouth considered moving and changed its mind. He signed the order with a legible name, "A gift in this courthouse." The clerk copied it. The bailiff distributed it. Paper changed hands with the heavy whisper of a small future. "Next," Navarre said, and the case moved from center stage to the edge without actually going anywhere. They filed out under the posted sign that reminded everyone to be decent. In the corridor, microphones sprouted like dandelions. Amaya avoided them and filed a 2-sentence update that walked in a straight line. "Court appoints GAL. Declines to move child pending report. Tuition paid directly by petitioner." She added one more. "Order preserves records." She hit send and felt the small click of a hinge doing what hinges do. Raymond approached Dara with the tolerance of professionals who don't confuse war with work. "Counsel," he said, "we'll circulate a draft protocol for communication. Make it short and true," she said. Veronica lingered a step away, eyes finding Janelle with the steadiness of a surveyor. "You realize this will exhaust you," she said. It wasn't a threat. It was a weather report. Janelle nodded. "You realize exhaustion isn't a reason to quit," she said. Note de fiant, plain. A ringtone cut the air a clean. Official chime. Raymond checked his phone and frowned the way men frown when letters try to change their afternoon. He stepped aside to read, and lowered his voice without leaving it entirely behind. "SEC staff letter," he said to Veronica, a tone that was not for the corridor, and therefore perfect for it. "Informal inquiry. They want to talk about Q3 recognition." Veronica's jaw turned to glass, and then back. "Of course they do," she said. Dara heard enough to tilt her head. Amaya did not turn, which is a way of turning. Janelle took in the exchange like weather. Noted. Folded. Saved. Outside, the courthouse steps made everyone democratic by gravity. Helena waited with a thermos that could have survived a war. She poured coffee into a paper cup and put it in Janelle's hand like a verdict the judge couldn't give. "How'd he do?" Helena asked, meaning the judge, and the boy, and the day. "He avoided adjectives," Janelle said, and the corners of Helena's eyes softened. Dara scrolled through her email and stopped at one from Miriam's office. Subject: intake questions. She smiled with 3 cells of her mouth. "We're in the sober part now," she said. "Bedtimes. Lunches. Do you cut grapes in half?" "Eighths," Janelle said, automatic. "See," Helena said, "Genius." A man with a camera but no right to use it lifted the lens a fraction. Amaya stepped between it and her subjects, like a cloud deciding where to rain. "Not today," she told him, voice calm enough to pass inspection. He lowered the camera because sometimes decency is just an embarrassed muscle. "Sorry," he said, and surprised himself by meaning it. Across the plaza, a city bus knelt for a woman with a grocery cart that had seen better wheels. The driver waited an extra half count after she cleared the line. The door side closed. The bus exhaled and pulled away like a well-trained animal. "Next," Janelle asked. "Gal intake," Dada said. "Then I file a short motion on records preservation so nobody gets cute. Then you go home and put a chicken in the oven like things are normal." "They aren't," Janelle said. "They will be for the hour it bakes." Helena said, "That counts." Amaya's phone buzzed. She read the text and made a face that signaled equal parts anger and faith. "Anonymous email," she said. Subject line: "You think truth feeds you?" "How were?" Janelle breathed in through her nose and out again. "Does it?" she asked. "When I chew," Amaya said. "And we chew." She slipped the phone away. "I'll write a standards piece tonight. No adjectives, just windows. Windows are how we fall out of buildings," Helena said, dry as a towel. "They're also how air gets in," Amaya said. A breeze came up from the river and ran a hand over everyone's coats. Janelle closed her fingers around the warm paper cup. The heat bled into her palm and slowed her pulse by half a beat. Across the street, a delivery guy jogged against the light and made it somewhere behind them. A clerk called the next case, and someone else stood and tried to make their voice the right size for a room that eats voices. "Let's go home," Helena said. "Wait," Dada said, eyes on her phone again. Email from Compliance Counsel for Blackwell. She read under her breath, "They want to stipulate to tuition by Friday and propose a mutual civility protocol. End of praise. Tell them I'll be civil," Janelle said. "If they learn to be human." Dara hid a smile. "I'll translate." They stepped off the curb together, 3 abreast. And for a half-second the crosswalk belonged only to them. Car tires hissed on wet paint. A siren moved somewhere else on business that didn't include them. The city made room. At the far side, Janelle paused and looked back at the courthouse. From this angle, the facade held a thin reflection of the sky, a forgettable blue torn by cloud. She thought of signatures and birthmarks, of diaries. Machines write when men are tired of telling the truth. Of a judge with a pen that preferred noun. She thought, briefly, of crying, and then felt how unhelpful that would be to the small body that would climb into her lap tonight and ask if buses sleep. "Not really," she would say. "They rest at the depot and plan their routes." She turned toward the bus stop. The metal bench was cold and honest under her palm. The posted timetable had lost a corner to weather. The staples held. A bus rounded the corner and slowed. Brake squeal, a tired hymn. The door opened with that simple click that had started to feel like a benediction. They got on. The driver looked forward, counted an extra beat before closing, and brought the whole machine back into motion, carrying them toward a kitchen where paper lived in the oven, and dinner pretended to be ordinary, and a locket warmed against skin like a small, steady Yes. The server room kept its own weather cold, dry, insistent. The air tasted like metal and old arguments. Daniel badged in with a hand that didn't fully belong to him and felt the door catch on its hinge. Before deciding to let him through, racks rose in black aisles, blue LEDs blinking the way cities do. From an airplane window, he listened a moment longer than necessary, as if the fans might change their pitch and tell him not to. He wore the sweater that looked like it understood spreadsheets, and carried a box of patch cables as if he had been sent to tidy. The badge reader logged him with a patient chirp. A fisheye camera above the door turned its glass eyelid and went back to pretending it was bored. He chose row C, midway down. A console tray slid out on old rails and complained softly. He woke the terminal with 2 taps. The login prompt blinked like a pulse. He breathed in on 4, held, out on 4, held, and typed his credentials without error. No flourish, no speed. The screen accepted him the way a cat accepts someone who doesn't want to be scratched. He opened the admin console and navigated like a man who had drawn the map. There it was, the diary that never promised to be kind. Event log system exports. Lines of plain truth, stamped at 1-second intervals, indifferent to who asked. He clicked filter, chose a window, and cooled his impatience. Dates he'd learned to recognize just before meetings, just after approvals. He watched the entries populate, regular and ruthless. User, admin, action, export, report, bid sequence proc, timestamp, 2023-06, 12T09, Shiwu, 2Z, user, Herrick J, action, reclassify, object, expense of consulting capital expenditure, timestamp, 2023-06, 12T09, Shirar, 45Z. Footers no one reads until they have to. Generated. Arling Arsenian Luyusharit. He could hear Chen's voice in his head, amused and exact. Birthmarks don't care about stage makeup. Kid. The thought steadied his hands. The exfiltration would be slow and dumb, the most respectable way to steal the truth. He opened, print to PDF, selected the USB printer that was not a printer at all, and let the console assemble a file with an honest name. He saved to a local staging folder with a path that didn't wink. He repeated for 3 segments, changing nothing except what dates he asked for. No batches, no zips, no cleverness. He ejected the console key and slid a thumb drive into the USB port plain, unlabeled. The kind you get in conference, swag bags, and keep for sins. The operating system gave him a drive letter the way a clerk gives you a deli number. He copied the PDFs with a drag, as nonchalant as reaching for coffee. Then he opened the hashing tool he kept in a utilities folder labeled old, because he trusted the word SHA 256. He highlighted and pasted the numbers as they arrived. A string of certainty that made his stomach settle. He wrote each digest on an index card in block letters, black ink, slow enough to carry respect. The cards looked like tiny tombstones. When he lined them up, he dated and initialed the corner. He did not draw a flourish. Flourishes are for weddings and liars. From his bag, he pulled 2 tamper-evident sleeves, red-tagged with serials that matched nothing else in this room. He slid the drive into one, pressed the adhesive with his thumb until the void pattern warned any future hands to choose carefully. He wrote the serial into his notebook, a cheap spiral he'd had since vendor day 1. Entry, Shizhou, Sushiyi, USB 1, log, export, Seg, AC, PDF. Hashes on index cards X3. Location, row C, bay 7. Witness, none. He made a second drive from a second copy and sealed that two packets like twin hearts, or two parachutes packed by the same calm person. He tucked them into the inner pocket of his sweater where the wool met his ribs and warmed them without apology. On the far side of the aisle, a rack door clicked open. He froze and listened. It clicked closed again, as if the room were reminding him it had other lives. He shut down his sessions one by one, leaving nothing arrogant behind. No open windows, no shortcuts, no evidence of emotion. He slid the console tray back until it caught, then pushed the last inch with a gentle shove that made the rails forgive him. At the door, he paused long enough to bring his heartbeat and the room's fan chorus into some temporary truce. Then he badged out, eyes on the floor, the camera's glass quiet. The corridor held after-hours carpet, and the faint detergent smell of a building that likes its own reflection. In the elevator bay, he stood to one side, as he always did, and became a man nobody felt compelled to remember. The doors opened. A night janitor inside nodded and made room for his box of patch cables, which had done the one job Daniel gave it, accounting for his hand. Late one, the janitor said, not a question. Upgrades. Daniel said, always upgrades. The janitor replied, and let it be a joke. They rode in a small, humming silence. The doors side open to the lobby where security pretended to be furniture. Daniel stepped into the coffered light and felt the temperature change across his skin like a minor key change. He signed the maintenance log with a version of his signature designed for clipboards. Nobody asked for anything else. He left into a wind that moved city grit along the curb like low tide. He did not go home. Home knew too much about him to hold this safely. He walked 3 blocks with the drive packets nested against him and turned into a strip of storefronts where the pawn shop kept the brightest neon and the mailbox place pretended it was a post office. Bells chimed. The shop smelled of toner and plastic envelopes and arguments about change of address. Box, the clerk asked without looking up. Stamps, Daniel said, and bought a small sheet because people who buy nothing look like people. He stepped to the side table, addressed 2 padded mailers in the neat hand of a man who wants postal workers to like him, and slid the red-tagged packets into each. One went to a P.O. box that belonged to A. Torres. At a newsroom that liked verbs, the other went to S. Master at the courthouse. A clerk who owed Chen a favor from a lecture in a year that still had optimism. He sealed both with a thumbprint that had nothing of melodrama in it, only oil and intent. He wrote the hash digests in the return corner like a man labeling jars of jam. It made him smile by accident. He slid both into the outgoing bin under the goofy sign that said, "We love mail," and realized he believed them. Outside, the street took his breath and asked him to earn the next one. A white SUV idled across from the awning, windows tinted to the legal limit that isn't. He felt its attention the way a piano feels a player's hands before they land. He turned left instead of right and walked past the laundromat where washers chinned their way through cycles like bored boxers. He used the glass to watch the SUV instead of his eye. It didn't move. He did. At the corner, he chose the bus over the train. The platform has cameras. The bus has people. He liked people for cover. He waited under a shelter that smelled faintly of cigarettes and old rain, and wrote a text to a number Amaya had given him that didn't look like hers. Dropped 2, same story, different addresses. Check the corners before you turn a page. He didn't sign it. She would know. The bus arrived with a hiss that did not announce holiness and opened its door with that practical click. He took a seat 3 rows back where he could see the hinge. He held onto the rail with both hands until he didn't have to. Across the aisle, a girl in scrubs fell asleep. One stop after she sat down and woke up exactly at hers. Like bodies trained by need, halfway to nowhere, the white SUV slid past and didn't look in. He watched it go. He counted to 8. He looked away. When he got off, he cut through the dog park where the ground was chewed into memory, and the smell of damp earth and fur flattened the rest of the world. He stood there too long and let his shoulders learn one small thing. Fear can't sprint forever. It gets bored. It asks for a ride. His phone vibrated with the ghost of an email, the push notification preview without the message. It's security. Quick chat tomorrow. Innocent font. Deadly punctuation. He stared at the screen in the dark and saw his own face overlaying the words, a drowning reflection in black glass. He opened a note and wrote what Chen would want. Contacted by IT. Post mailing. Preserve device. Then he powered the phone down, because sometimes cowardice is just smart sequencing. He climbed the tenement stairs, feeling each step through the soles of his shoes. On the landing, a neighbor's TV leaked a courtroom show trying to teach people the wrong lessons. He got to his door, put the key in. Stop. Listen. Nothing but the radiator unlatching heat. A creature turned gentle by age. Inside, he set his sweater on a chair and took out the index cards like votive offerings. He placed them in an envelope with their time and his initials and put the envelope in the freezer between peas and the ice tray. Because water remembers secrets, without telling them, he sat on the edge of his bed and didn't lie down. He thought about calling someone and decided against bringing anyone into the gravitational field of this hour. Silence filled in around him. It had a weight, but not all weights crush. Some hold. He stared at the ceiling until the ceiling stared back. He pictured the admin console's lines ticking forward exactly as he was thinking about them. Documentarian of crimes and mistakes, and occasionally acts of goodness disguised as maintenance. Somewhere across the city, a newsroom night desk clerk scanned the mail and held up a padded envelope that felt too heavy for letters. Somewhere under a fluorescent hum, a clerk at family court sorted the incoming and ran a finger over the red tamper tape like a rosary for bureaucrats. Somewhere higher up, a woman in a tower closed her eyes against a headache. She refused to call a conscience. Daniel lay back finally and laced his fingers on his chest like a man in a painting whose painter liked order. He said nothing to the dark. He practiced the one note he could hold. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. The radiator clicked to a rhythm he allowed himself to believe was friendly. He slept, not well and not for long. When the morning loosened the room, he woke with a start at a hinge sound from the hallway, and smiled, because it was only someone else's door deciding to open. He sat up, he reached for his notebook, he wrote the time, then he stood, found his shoes, and prepared to be boring and right for as long as it took. The newsroom woke the way a dog wakes ear first. Phones buzzed on metal desks. A copy editor set down a cup so carefully it didn't make a sound, as if noise could jinx a fact. Amaya stood in the halo of the layout screen, arms crossed tight enough to keep the day inside her ribs. The padded envelope had arrived an hour before dawn, red tamper tape intact, hash values handwritten in a neat, almost sweet block. A night editor had initialed the chain log with a shrug that, for once, meant reverence. Again, Amaya said. The tech on duty read the digest for the third time. File A. Shah, de l'école and sees Tina 6 3B. K7. File B. He stopped, checked, kept going. They matched the index cards. The cards matched the email that had ghosted in from nowhere and everywhere. The PDFs opened with that dull municipal grace, plain text, time stamps, user IDs, footers humming their small, unforgiving song. Generated. Arling Arsanian Luya Arit. Language, Amaya said, and the standards memo she'd written last night slid into place inside her head. Like a mag loaded right, we use search under warrant. Not raid. Insane. We describe conduct, not character. We don't speculate. And we call everyone by name. The managing editor nodded. Thyroid of a man who has swallowed the city's bile for 20 years. Headline: Empire built on corruption, Amaya said, and then shook it off like a dog after rain. No. Bid sequences and birthmark. She smiled. I'll bury the poetry in the nut graph. Give me verbs, he said, not gravestones. Verbs you'll get, she said, already typing. She wrote the lead like a note slid under a locked door. Internal administrative logs show Blackwell Industries reclassifying consulting expenses as capital expenditures minutes before exporting bid sequence reports, according to documents verified by the Journal. The Federal Securities and Exchange Commission confirmed an informal inquiry. A spokesperson declined to comment on the timing. She kept her hands from adjectives. She let the diary speak. A witness who doesn't crave the mic. On the copy desk, a young editor tried the word alleged against 3 different sentences and left it in 2. Amaya swapped raid for search under warrant before anyone else could ask. A lawyer down the hall marked 2 phrases in the margin, one about intent, one about knowledge. Amaya cut both, like she'd promised she would cut bravado. The day she stopped being a stringer, they hit publish at 10. Ling Lu, not a minute before, the page loaded like a soft hinge, settling into place. The newsroom went quiet for a breath. No one owned. Then the phones remembered themselves. At the tower, a receptionist looked up from her monitor and saw a sheet of paper under glass, held at an angle by a man whose suit fit like it knew his thoughts. Search warrant. United States District Court. Case number block fonts. Statute citations like cliffs. Scope: procurement records, bid sequences, financial reports, June through September, both printed and electronic. Names, dates. The agent said, "Good morning," as if that were part of the warrant, and it might as well have been. Raymond met them in the lobby. Tea already straight. "Will accommodate," he said. "Please note the stated scope on the second page." He didn't say, "Welcome." He didn't touch the paper. He spoke in a tone that would read fine later. "Scope, we have," the lead agent said, voice plain as a tape measure. He gestured. 2 agents to comms, 2 to procurement, 1 to IT. They moved like a method, not a mood. In procurement, an agent handed a copy of the warrant to a woman with a lanyard and said, "You keep this." Evidence tape hissed as boxes sealed. Laptops went into gray foam nests. Each tag got a number. Each number got a line in a log. The lead agent announced locator tags before placing them, a liturgy more soothing than any prayer. In IT, a tech asked if they were taking the servers. The agent shook his head. "No, almost kind. We image, forensic copy. You'll get a manifest, a portable write blocker clamped onto a drive. A screen reflected blue onto a face that didn't blink any more than it had to." Raymond escorted the lead up to 42. Veronica stood with the lilies, as if the petals could make the day apologize. She didn't ask what this was. The warrant made questions rhetorical. She read it once, twice, and placed it on the walnut, like fragile glass. And the room didn't dare break it. "Search under warrant," the agent said out loud, as if someone might file a complaint about the diction. "Noted." she said, voice level. You'll find nothing illegal. You'd be surprised what we find, he said, and made it least threatening by looking at the ceiling while he said it. He moved on. Veronica stood in a room increasingly labeled by people who don't run this floor, and felt a sliver of relief the size of a splinter. If they took it, at least they were taking it by law. Her phone vibrated once. Hard. A board member. What the hell is happening? Another. We stand with you. Another. Optics. She typed, we respect the process, and hit send to everyone. A one-size reply that wore decency like a coat. Then she called Janelle. At the bus stop, Janelle read the story on her phone in the honest light of noon. No adjectives, just lines. She reached the part about the footers and smiled without showing teeth. Tyler kicked the curbstone and counted the kicks to 8. Helena's text pinged in. You breathing? Janelle sent back. We breathe. We ride. The bus arrived. The hinge clicked. They got on. Her phone rang with a number she knew and had no reason to. She answered because sometimes decency is a trap, and sometimes it's a weapon. You destroyed my life, Veronica said, breathless, which was new. The words came out like someone else's. No, Janelle said, not cruel. You built a life with doors that only opened one way. This is the air coming in. You will regret this. Veronica said, I will. You will comply with a court order, Janelle said, keeping her voice low so Tyler would hear only the bus. And you will pay your grandson's tuition on time like the judge told you. Silence walked around the other end of the line. When it came back, it had shoes on. I'm paying it now, Veronica said, and I will keep paying. But I will not go quietly into whatever moral story you think you're writing. I'm not writing a story, Janelle said. I'm keeping one. She ended the call and slid the phone into her pocket like a tool, not a wound. Tyler leaned against her, small skull under her shoulder. The bus lurched, regained rhythm, carried them down a street that did not know their names and somehow served them anyway. In the late afternoon, someone popped both wipers off Janelle's old sedan, where it parked 3 corners from the apartment, as if doing harm could be dignified if it were inconvenient enough. A note under the remaining arm. You like paper. Here's some. She kept the note, bagged it, logged, found Zexon, Arshuar, windshield, paper, no letterhead, ink run. She called a neighbor for wipers and installed them herself under a sky practicing snow. At 4, an unknown man arrived at Tyler's school and told the office he was there for pickup. The secretary checked ID like oxygen and didn't give him air. He left. They called Janelle. She walked the last 4 blocks and used her breath on hello instead of panic. She signed the log twice. She thanked the secretary for knowing how to be the kind of hinge that keeps children instead of the kind that lets men through. You want us to call the police? The secretary asked, one eyebrow doing the work of 2. Call the process, Janelle said. Tell them the school knows what the word authorized means. When they got home, the hallway smelled like boiled cabbage and bleach, and the old attempt at order. Helena met them at the door with a pot holder shaped like a fish and a laugh shaped like a shield. Dinner, she announced, chicken pretending to be competent. Tyler, hands. Janelle washed hers. She washed them longer than she needed to. She let the water have what it wanted. She turned it off. Evening brought the click of a door down the hall and the quiet of someone writing better than talking. The television stayed dark. The radio stayed polite. Janelle sat with the chain note, added the note, the wipers, the school incident, each with time and place and who breathed on it. She pressed the pen hard enough to make the next page remember. Tyler took out his violin and stood on a towel like a performer who respects floors. Long note, he said, and set the bow. He drew the sound into the room, thin at first, gaining muscle, then losing it, then finding it again like a survivor, learning to carry groceries after the cast comes off. He held the pitch with his face bent serious. The radiator shushed along. The candle flickered in the draft and then forgave the window. The note reached the place where hands wobble and decided not to. He ended clean. Again, Helena said, not clapping. He did it again. And this time his bow hand aligned like geometry and grace. In the tower, agents sealed boxes and tagged laptops and signed forms. One copy for the company, one for the court, one for the people who imagine physics will bend for them. Evidence tape whispered its private warning. A door to a conference room swung and set, not angry, just heavy. Raymond thanked the lead agent for not being a bully. The agent thanked him for not being a child. They left each other with the awkward civility of men who share time zones but not faith. Veronica sat by the window and watched the city file past. On her desk, a tuition confirmation email glowed like a late candle. Payment posted. She had done that and felt disorientingly. A part of herself relax. She considered the lilies and didn't touch them. Amaya's story climbed like weather over a neighborhood. A bus driver clicked the link at a red light and liked it for the way it didn't shout. A maintenance worker on break read the bit about generated Arling Arsenian Luya Shara and nodded because of course that mattered. A law clerk texted a friend, "Get me on the special master docket." The friend replied with a bus emoji and a gavel. The city did what cities do, decide whether to care one person at a time. At 9, Amaya got an email from a church basement account. Hash values match my card. Don't D. She smiled and wrote back. Cards survive freezers. People survive nights. She hovered over send and, for once, added a comma where she didn't need one. Daniel read the story alone and said nothing to the dark. He folded his hands on his chest. He thought of the white SUV that had not turned its head. He thought of the line on his phone from IT, and how tomorrow would ask questions with polite voices. He thought, briefly, of a bus door that will open, even if you're late, if the driver is the right kind of human, before bed. Janelle stepped to the window and put her palm on the cold glass. The city offered its temperature back like a polite lie. Tyler slept, curled around his case, a hand thrown outward as if to stop a crowd or wave it through. Helena dozed in the chair with a book open to a line about mercy that she'd pretend not to remember liking. Janelle turned off the lamp. The hallway kept its small coin of light. Somewhere outside, a late bus sighed at a stop, making space for someone who ran with a bag knocking at their hip. The door swung. The hinge held. She watched the dark until it let her join. Across town, a woman in a high room turned off a light and watched the reflection of the city step into the glass. In both places, the quiet said the same thing. Hold. The courtroom assigned for the evidentiary hearing was brighter than the rest, as if daylight paid extra. Sun worked through the tall panes and landed on the counsel tables in two sharp lozenges. The benches creaked with the careful weight of people trying not to be part of a story. A clerk stacked exhibits with a rhythm that would have made a drummer jealous. Dara arranged her files the way surgeons arrange steel. Blue tabs for case law, yellow for facts that refuse to be decorative, red for traps. She set her pen parallel to the edge of the pad and breathed once, slow enough to put a tax on the minute. Veronica entered in a jacket that asked fabric to stand at attention. Raymond hovered a half step behind, a constellation of associates orbiting his elbows. He nodded to the bailiff like a man greeting gravity. They took their places. The lilies did not come to court. Their absence made the room smell like wood and nerves. All rise, the clerk said, and Judge Navarre took the bench with the same economy as before. No wasted gesture, no taste for pageantry. He glanced at the calendar and then at them as if to say, "Don't make me regret time. We're here on respondents' motion to preserve records and petitioners' motion to exclude certain exhibits," he said, "and perhaps, with luck, truth." He looked over his glasses. "Appearances are as before. Proceed." Raymond stood, a screen lowered from the ceiling with the soft sigh of a confession. Finding a microphone. "Your Honor." Petitioner moves to exclude Exhibit K, a purported video of Ms. Ward receiving cash from an unidentified party, he said, voice smooth. He clicked a remote. The monitor flared into a cheap camera angle nighttime. A parking lot. The jitter of a phone held in a nervous hand. A woman in a coat that could be Janelle's. A man's arm. A stack of bills in a rubber band. The exchange quick. Ugly. Grainy. Gasps are rare in family court, but the benches made a sound like one person forgetting to swallow. Janelle didn't move. She looked at the screen, the way you look at weather through double glass. Dara didn't look at it at all. She looked at the judge. "We do not seek to offer Exhibit K," Dara said, dry as a statue. "We seek sanctions for its existence." Raymond blinked. "Counsel, this is your exhibit." "No," Dara said. "This is a message someone texted to me last night from a number that doesn't believe in area codes. It arrived with metadata that contradicts its own pixels." She stepped to the monitor. "Your Honor, permission to connect a laptop." Navarre rubbed the bridge of his nose and gestured to the cord. Briefly, he said. Dara plugged in and threw a still frame of the clip onto the screen. She pointed to the bottom right edge, the numbers that only people who've been fooled learn to see. Timestamp overlay shows 21. Ling Luke. Shasan, she said, but the file's creation date in the container is 12. Ling Si. Wu Shi. Different font. Wrong kerning. Ratio mismatch. Also, the shadow angles suggest a light source behind and above inconsistent with the lot's fixtures. More to the point, she clicked to a second image. An inventory sticker on the dumpster. Places the footage at a facility in Queens. Ms. Ward was at home with the guardian ad litem at that time. Seagal notes. Exhibit D. Murmurs reassembled into silence. Miriam Porter, seated at the sidebar with a thin folder, lifted a hand. "Confirmed," she said. "I was at Ms. Ward's residence between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. Child present. Homework completed. Violin practice attempted and abandoned for reasons not germane to this court." Navarre's mouth twitched. "We keep our scope," he said. He turned to Raymond. "Counsel." Raymond evaluated the air. "We did not offer Exhibit K," he repeated. Chagrin measured. "We oppose its use for any purpose." "Granted," Navarre said. "Exhibit K is excluded. And if I see one more deep fake in my part, I'm going to start collecting phones at the door like a nightclub in 2003. He turned to the clerk. "Note for the record, Ms. Porter's statement. Now respondent's motion to preserve records." Dara handed up a short order. "We ask that the court direct both parties to maintain digital and paper records relevant to procurement, communications about the child, and any contact with social services that include phone dumps, call logs, and administrative logs in petitioner's custody. No unilateral deletions. No housekeeping." Raymond half raised a hand. "We have no objection to a mutual order," he said. "With a special master to manage scope." "Excellent," Navarre said. "I will appoint a special master. Propose 2 names. If you can't agree, I'll appoint someone mean." A snort escaped from the back before its owner could strangle it. Amaya stared at the floor like it had said something funny. Her pen moved anyway, writing, "Deep fake excluded. Gal alibi. Special master inbound." She underlined, "Inbound" for herself, because sometimes it's a pleasure to be precise. "Next witness," Navarre said. Dara stood. "Respond calls Daniel O'Reilly." Daniel took the stand with the reluctant grace of a man who intends to survive his own good deed. He was sworn in by a clerk who looked like she crocheted justice on her lunch hour. He sat, hands folded like unsure prayer. "State your name and occupation," Dada said. He did. "Systems analyst. Blackwell Industries. Infrastructure. Logs. Some QA because we're understaffed." "Describe what an administrative export log is," she said. "Simple as a glass of water." He swallowed. "A diary the system keeps. Every time someone exports or reclassifies data, it writes an entry. Time. User. Action. Object. You can ignore it. It won't ignore you. You reviewed such logs for the period June through September." Dada said. "Yes," he said. "I printed excerpts to PDF, hashed them, and mailed identical copies to a special master's intake and to a journalist." He glanced at Amaya, then back at Dara quickly, like a man who had seen a lighthouse and didn't want to stare. "Why mailing?" Dara asked. "Chain of custody," he said. "Certified outgoing. Internal scan at receipt. Less touch points than a handoff in a parking lot." He blushed at his own attempt at humor and let it go. "Directing your attention to Exhibit G," Dara said, holding up a set of pages sealed under a sleeve. "Are these accurate copies of the logs?" "Yes," he said. "Hash values match." He recited them from memory, a string of characters that sounded like a spell, willing the page to stay honest. "What do they show?" Dada asked. "That on June 12th, a user reclassified consulting expenses as capital expenditures," he said, almost apologizing to grammar. Minutes later, an admin account exported bid sequence reports. The footers showed generation dates aligned with the reclassification. "It's tight sequencing." "Why does that matter?" she said. "Capitalizing expenses can change profit on paper," he said. "Moving numbers between boxes isn't illegal by itself. Timing makes it interesting." Raymond approached slowly, like easing into cold water. "Mr. O'Reilly, you're not a CPA." "No," Daniel said, "so you can't opine on accounting propriety." Raymond said. "No," Daniel said, "only on what the machine wrote down when people told it to do things. And no one asked you to collect these logs." Raymond said. "No," Daniel said, "they just existed. Like weather." He took a breath he didn't need, and added, "I saved them like that, too." Raymond nodded as if he had found the line he wanted. "You mailed copies to the press." "To two places," Daniel said, "so I wouldn't be the only hinge." A whisper smiled through the gallery. Navarre cleared his throat the way a teacher does when a good line threatens to turn the class into poets. "Counsel," he said, "we'll leave merit to other rooms. The order to preserve records will issue with teeth. Mr. O'Reilly, you will not be punished in this part for bringing me clocks." "Yes, Your Honor," Daniel said, eyes fixed on the wood grain. Dada sat. Raymond rested his case for the moment. The judge turned to Miriam. "Ms. Porter, interim observations. Child appears bonded to respondent," she said, "without adornment, routines in place. Grapes halved without dramatics. Violin earnest. School engaged. I have not observed petitioner with the child. Scheduling pending. Both parties articulate love in different dialects. That is not dispositive. It matters anyway." "Thank you," Navarre said. He looked at each table as if daring them to misbehave. Let's talk about the tuition line. It's paid, Veronica said softly, and for the first time today, something in her voice wasn't a weapon. It will remain paid. Excellent, Navarre said. You just bought yourself the right to behave. He capped his pen. We're adjourned until Porter's report. Special master, to be appointed within 48 hours. He stood. The room exhaled. The corridor bloomed with microphones. Amaya threaded through, recording her own silence. She filed, "Court excludes fabricated clip. Orders record preservation under special master. Systems analyst confirms export log sequence." She added one sentence that didn't need adjectives. Tuition posted. Dara caught up with Daniel near the elevators. "You did fine," she said. "You owed no one poetry." He stared at the call buttons as if they might choose him. "It wants to talk," he said. "I might be fired. We'll find you a job labeling time," she said. "People always need clock." He laughed once, and it broke into two pieces and fell on the floor. And he let it. Veronica stood against a window where the glass made the city flinch. Raymond leaned close. "Special master is a wall," he said. "We can't harm a wall." "I know," she said. She watched Janelle pass with Helena, neither woman leaning on the other, and both somehow steadier for the proximity. "Do you ever get tired of the inside of your own head?" she asked him, surprising both of them with the question. "Daily," he said, honest without calculation. "We go again." She nodded. She looked down at her hand and saw, as if someone else had raised it, a small brown smear on her thumb from a coffee she didn't remember drinking. She wiped it with a tissue, like a person who doesn't like stains, and, for a second, wished she had left it. Home smelled like chicken and a page turned. Janelle set the chain notebook on the table and wrote, "Fake video received. Metadata contradict. Excluded." Daniel testified, "Special master inbound." She underlined nothing. Tyler pulled out his violin, and tonight the long note arrived without wobble and stayed. He stopped when the radiator clicked and smiled at the interruption, as if the room had applauded. "Again," Helena said, and he did. Across the river, in a newsroom still buzzing, Amaya stood by the window and watched a bus kneel for a man whose bag had more duct tape than fabric. The driver waited the extra beat that wasn't in any manual. Amaya lifted a hand to the glass, like a person blessing a thing they don't worship. She turned back to her desk and cut one more adjective. In the tower, boxes labeled with numbers sat on a cart like quiet animals ready to move. A janitor polished the brass on a hinge that held a door open for agents all afternoon and would hold it for Veronica when she left. He saw himself in the metal, made a face, and grinned at his own joke. Night took possession. Streetlights buzzed. The cold turned very honest, somewhere between the courthouse and a kitchen with an oven that doubled as a safe. A bus door swung and settled. The hinge did its work thankless, exact, while people stepped on and off, carrying their versions of the same story, each one heavier or lighter by a hair. Millbrook Women's had a smell that didn't admit season's bleach. Laundry steam, the nickel tang of keys. Fluorescence hummed. A correctional officer slid a bin across the counter and said, "Shoes, belt, phone," like a prayer taught to him young. Janelle set her things in one clean motion. Helena signed the visitor log with a pen chained to the desk. Tyler stood taller than the last time this room saw him, violin case in his hand like a small, defiant flag. "Ward, Washington," the officer called, checking his sheet. "You've got an hour. No touching except at the beginning and end." He glanced at the case. "Instrument, violin," Tyler said, voice even. "No metal except the strings." The officer nodded and ran the wand anyway. It crackled over latches and settled. "You play in here. You play soft." I'll try, Tyler said, which was the only honest answer. They crossed to the visiting room, plastic chairs, bolted tables, a vending machine that hummed louder than the lights, a bulletin board crowding itself with announcements. No one wanted parenting classes, GED sign-up, a list of books a library would have been ashamed of. A guard held the inner door, and it clicked behind them with a familiar, uninterested sound. Veronica came in wearing the uniform that made everyone the same color orange, faded to melon from 100 institutional washes. She looked smaller without the angles money gives. Her hair had abandoned the idea of being disciplined, but her spine, even here, hadn't learned to bend to anything but sleep. "Hello," she said, and the syllables didn't cut. Janelle put a hand on Tyler's shoulder. He stepped forward, awkward teen grace stumbling into itself, and let Veronica hug him quick and careful. She smelled like starch and something lemon that tried very hard. "You're taller," Veronica said, to give him a safe place to stand. "School feeds me," he said. "Also scales. Scales feed everyone who wants to matter," she said, and seemed surprised to hear herself say it. They sat. Helena took the chair that looked like a chaperone's because she trusted furniture as much as people. The officer remained beside the door, trying to look like an idea. "How's your?" Veronica began, then abandoned the search for a word and settled on, "How are you?" "Alive," Janelle said. "Hungry." "Proud." "Of him," Veronica said, and the second pronoun landed like something she'd been saving. "Of us?" Janelle said. "Gentle." Veronica nodded, her hands folded, unfolded. The skin on her fingers had done new work, and showed it. "Tyler," she said, turning to him, "your mother wrote that you were accepted." "Conservatory prep," he said, "summer cohort. I got placed with a teacher who scares me in a good way." "Good," she said. "Fear with discipline is just the edge of courage." He smiled. "Because compliments in this room preferred to wear uniforms, too. I could play something," he said. "If it's okay." The officer looked at his watch and at the room and at the ceiling. "Keep it under a minute," he said. A man bribed by sound against his will. Tyler opened the case with a practiced tenderness. The varnish caught the light wrong and then right. He tucked the chin rest, set the bow, and found the note like a swimmer finding water that wants him back. It wasn't a song yet. It was a line, long and true, drawn across the air until it learned where to stand. The vending machine buzzed on a neighboring frequency. Someone laughed 2 rooms down and stopped. The note held, settled, slid into melody. One his teacher had permitted because it knew how to walk in shoes. Albinoni first bar. Then the phrase they called the hinge. A bridge Janelle had written into him in a kitchen where paper lived in the oven and a radiator shushed like an old aunt. When he finished, he lowered the bow, like a person putting down a thought, before it turned into an argument. Silence tucked its shirt back in. "Thank you," Veronica said. It was the closest she'd come to prayer in months, maybe years. She looked at Janelle. "Why tell me this? Why bring him?" "Because he asked if bad people can become good," Janelle said, "not to punish. I told him I didn't know. I told him I'd ask." Veronica's mouth tried to decide between defense and grief, and landed on human blank. "Some of us get worse by insisting we're already good," she said. "I'm trying to be." "Not that trying counts," Helena said, saving everyone from the weight of the next silence. "We work with what the day gives." Veronica let the line sit, then picked it up with both hands. "How long do you have him?" she asked, eyes on Tyler. "Have." Did a lot of work without drawing attention to itself. "Forever," Janelle said, and then softened it with, "legally permanency order finalized last month." Gal testified. Special Master wrote a report that made numbers feel like honesty. The judge signed in blue ink. He wanted his pen to read later. Veronica breathed out, and it looked like a small weight leaving her chest and refusing to hit the floor. Raymond sent me the docket entry, she said. He represented me at sentencing. You know, he told the court I had capacity for regret. The judge said that wasn't a legal term. Helena's mouth canted. Judge prefer noons. Do you hate me? Veronica asked, direct, because the room had rules about time. Janelle considered the scuffed floor tile, the hairline crack running from one bolt to another. I don't, she said. I hated what you did. Then I learned to hate the part of the city that clapped when you did it. Now I'm just busy. Busy is the opposite of despair, Helena said, not looking up from the visitor rules she wasn't reading. Old lady wisdom, free of charge. Veronica laughed, one small, startled sound that hadn't been in her voice's vocabulary before. It changed her face for a moment, then left, like a bird that had picked the wrong window. How is the tower? She asked, then caught herself. The company, I hear things. Boards always hear things, Janelle said. SEC. Consent decree. Monitorship. 2 executives resigned on a Friday afternoon at 4:59. Procurement, rewritten like a decent cookbook. A janitor I met at the courthouse got hired in compliance. She paused. Raymond took a job teaching ethics. I read the flyer twice. Veronica closed her eyes for a beat, as if seeing her old life on a screen someone else controlled. Self-destruction, she said, tasting the phrase like a regret. It wasn't your story that did it. It was me insisting the hinge obey the door. Tyler set the bow across his lap and looked between them with the curiosity of someone who will make art from whatever he's given. What does that mean? He asked. Nothing, Veronica said quickly. Everything, Helena said. Ask me later. Sugar. I'll make you pancakes and define hubris in syrup. They let the laugh they deserve. It didn't echo. The room wouldn't allow it. The officer checked his watch. 5, he said. Veronica looked at Tyler again, and the room narrowed to that look. Do you hate me? She asked him, and the officer shifted his weight. But Helena didn't reach for a rule because some questions are their own permission slips. I don't know you, Tyler said. I only know the stories about you. Some are bad. Some are sad. Mom says people aren't one thing. Janelle didn't flinch. He had earned that sentence. I was many things, Veronica said. I'm trying to be less of them. She cleared her throat. I fold laundry here. I do it well. Do they pay you enough to buy a violin string? Tyler asked. Sincere. No, she said, and laughed again. Freer this time. But they pay me enough to buy stamps. I send letters to people I never thank. She folded her hands, stopping herself from reaching for him twice. I would like to write to you, if your mother agrees. Janelle thought of the chain notebook, the careful weight of paper when it behaves, the way a mailbox makes people equal for the length of a stamp. She nodded once. We'll read them together, she said. If they have verbs, Veronica nodded back, learning the language. They will. The officer tipped his chin toward the door. Time. They stood. Tyler closed the case and clicked the latches in a rhythm that felt like punctuation. He stepped into Veronica's arms again, a hug more certain than the first. She closed her eyes and memorized the angle like a musician storing a phrase. When she let go, she kept her hands at her sides as if they'd learned something. Helena squeezed Veronica's shoulder in a gesture smuggled past policy by age. Stay stubborn, she said. Just pick better nouns. I'm learning, Veronica said. They left under lights that didn't blink. At the counter, Janelle collected keys. Belt. Phone. Outside. Winter had finally decided what it was. The air pinched noses, made breath. makes smoke. The sun had gone soft in its leaving. In the lot, a bus idled state contract shuttle door open. Heat billowing. Driver in a knit cap counting to no one. "Mom," Tyler said, "can I play at the community center next week? They're doing a thing for families who can't afford lessons." "You can," Janelle said. "We will." They walked to the stop where the city bus would come when it could. Across the road, a billboard pleaded with drivers to check their blind spots. A woman in a coat 2 sizes too large hurried past carrying 3 paper sacks. Janelle raised a hand, and the woman raised hers back. Reflex courtesy of strangers who've learned how to keep a day from buckling. Helena tucked her scarf tighter. "You did right," she said, without specifying the deed. "It's never enough. It's always enough. I don't want him to be a story," Janelle said, watching Tyler set the case carefully between his shoes. "He won't," Helena said. "He'll be the person who wrote one." The bus came heavy with other people's hours. The door opened. That same faithful click. The driver met Janelle's eye and waited the extra beat again, because some habits are a kind of quiet politics. They climbed. Tyler took a seat by the window and fogged a circle with his breath, drawing nothing in it because some emptiness is worth keeping. In the high windows of the prison, fluorescents blinked, corrected themselves, stayed. Inside, Veronica folded towels with an exactness that was useful in rooms like this and overdue elsewhere. She paused, thumb brushing a fray on the seam of a pillowcase. She looked up at the ceiling as if it might offer sheet music. It didn't. She kept folding. She hummed what she could remember of The Hinge, and, for the length of a line, forgot to be anyone but a woman who liked getting corners square. Back on the bus, the city unspooled auto shops, Baba Paul's, a church sign promising a revival that had probably come and gone. Janelle rested her head against the cool glass, the locket warming the hollow of her throat. Tyler tapped the case in 4s, then 8s, then let his hand go still. Helena closed her eyes and pretended not to sleep. At the next stop, a man ran for the door. Vague, flapping, face hopeful in the small way of someone who has been late too often. The driver waited past the schedule by a margin that would never show on a spreadsheet. The man made it, breathless, grateful. The hinge took the weight and set it down. The door shut. The bus moved. No one said, "The end." The city wouldn't have believed them if they had. In the end, The Hinge reminds us that justice is rarely swift and redemption almost never clean. Every character learned, in their own way, that silence is a choice, one that protects comfort but suffocates truth. Janelle's quiet defiance shows that dignity doesn't require wealth or a title. It demands consistency, courage, and the willingness to face a world that often rewards arrogance over honesty. Veronica's fall, meanwhile, reveals how power, without empathy, rots from the inside. You can polish every door in your tower, but if the hinge, the moral center, has rusted, the whole structure will collapse. Life, like that hinge, moves only when pressure meets resistance. Sometimes, the creak we hear isn't failure, it's transformation. The story reminds us that what you plant, you harvest, a truth as old as any proverb, yet still radical, in a world where shortcuts glitter louder than integrity. Each of us carries the ability to rebuild what was broken, to listen instead of dominate, to speak when silence feeds injustice. And when we do, we become part of a quieter revolution, the one that replaces vengeance with accountability and fear with presence. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a question, a reckoning, share it. Tell us how you've faced the moments when truth cost more than silence. Leave a comment. Hit like if the story spoke to you. and subscribe for more tales that peel back the layers of what it means to be human, flawed, and still fighting for decency. May your days ahead be steady, your doors open easily, and your hinges never forgot